Create an ultra-detailed, hyper-realistic, immersive cinematic world description that pushes visual storytelling to its absolute limit, designed specifically for generating next-generation photorealistic imagery with maximum clarity, texture depth, and environmental precision. The prompt should focus on building a scene so vivid that every micro-detail feels alive, emphasizing realism, physics-accurate lighting, precision textures, real-world materials, natural reflections, and lifelike environmental interactions. The scene must showcase a fully developed three-dimensional environment where every surface, angle, and light source behaves exactly as it would in a high-end professional photography setup, ensuring that the final generated image resembles an authentic real-world capture. The world described should feel like a place that actually exists. The textures must be physically accurate, the reflections must be true to the laws of optics, the contrast must be balanced in a way that imitates professional dynamic range, and the perspective should represent a real camera's understanding of distance and depth. Every material, whether metal, fabric, glass, leather, paint, or concrete, should carry microscopic authenticity, meaning the viewer can almost feel the surface by looking at it. The visual simulation should be of such high quality that even the smallest imperfections, dust particles, reflections, distortions, light scattering, and material inconsistencies are captured exactly as they would appear in a real ultra-high-resolution 8K professional photograph. The prompt should revolve around building a hyper-rich environment where light is the main storyteller. Soft diffused shadows, realistic highlight bloom, natural light physics, accurate light temperature, and highly detailed reflections must all be described. Ambient occlusion must appear naturally, without exaggeration, forming subtle shadow gradients in corners, curves, and areas where objects meet. Each element must be influenced by its surrounding environment, including objects reflecting off each other, refracting through transparent materials, and casting shadows that change depending on the intensity and direction of the light source. Surfaces should have micro scratches, fingerprints, dust textures, fabric threads, or reflections that change with angle, giving the illusion of a perfect real scene frozen in time. This prompt must involve complex atmospheric depth, meaning that objects further away must have accurate environmental haze, fall-off, and tonal reduction. Everything must follow the natural physics of the real world. The goal is to create a long, evolving description that fills the viewer's imagination with a multi-layered environment so convincing that the generated imagery feels indistinguishable from top-tier DSLR or mirrorless camera photography. The camera system imagined in the description should be high-end, full-frame sensor, 50mm or 85mm prime lens, f1.4 to f5.6 aperture range, shallow depth if required, ultra-sharp focus plane, natural bokeh, and realistic chromatic aberration where needed. The prompt should guide the system to produce clarity on the subject while letting the background gradually soften. Every detail in the environment should be intentional. Reflections on polished metal, perfect shine variation, shadow depth, dust floating in air, accurate color grading, and high dynamic range compression that mirrors real camera output. The tone of the description should remain highly visual and narrative-driven, creating a world that builds itself with line after line. It should not rely on headings or bullet points. Everything should remain in one continuous descriptive flow that grows more and more detailed as it progresses. The prompt should be structured like a giant river of sensory detail, never breaking, never slowing, always expanding the scene. It should include layered sensory information: visual, atmospheric, spatial, textural, and environmental. The environment must evolve, expanding with additional depth, new reflections, added complexity, and new subtle elements that enhance realism further without breaking immersion. The description should include the idea of subtle movement even though the final image is still. Dust in the air, light shifting off a glossy surface, a reflection changing slightly as though someone is about to walk into frame, and tiny visual dynamics that hint at life. The world should feel lived in, not sterile. The atmosphere must feel like a real place that has temperature, humidity, density, acoustics, and natural imperfections. Light bouncing off metal should have a warm tint depending on the source. Reflections on glass should carry distortions based on curvature. Shadows should have different intensities based on distance and object softness. The final result should evoke the sense of a moment perfectly captured, filled with authenticity. As the prompt continues, expand the intensity of detail, introducing new elements to enrich the visual experience. Layered surfaces, architecture, reflections in windows, subtle imperfections in floor textures, tactile realism in every object, soft volumetric lighting in certain areas, high contrast reflections in glossy surfaces, diffused ambient glow in the background, and extremely sharp detailed focus on the main subject. Each additional detail must increase realism, never reduce it. The scene must be complex yet clearly understandable, filled with visual hierarchy that guides the viewer's eye naturally. Use deeply descriptive sensory language to explain how the environment feels. The coolness of polished metal, the warmth of direct light, the soft grain of leather, the crisp sharpness of glass edges, the subtle texture of painted surfaces, and the gentle gradient of colors fading from light to shadow. The world must feel immersive enough for the viewer to imagine smelling the leather, feeling the cold air, hearing faint echoes in the large space, and sensing the presence of distant objects beyond the visible frame. The prompt should maintain a cinematic narrative quality, as though describing the opening shot of a high-budget film, slow, sweeping, atmospheric, full of grandeur, but grounded in photorealism. The location should feel premium, modern, elegant, and highly polished, yet subtly imperfect as all real environments are. Visual emphasis must be placed on realistic material rendering, including imperfect edges, natural wear, slightly uneven surfaces, and incredibly subtle variations in color caused by real-world lighting. Each paragraph must gradually intensify the realism further, introducing increasingly finer micro details until the world feels overwhelmingly vivid. This includes describing